What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Turn on the Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPaul11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Mike's face is here, so in my head, I instantly thought this was the All 32 pod, which we'll be recording right after this. Wanted to hop on here. We were going to talk just AFC, the All AFC team going into 2025, which we'll get to in a second. Aaron Rodgers, in peak Aaron Rodgers form, saw Elon Musk and Donald Trump fighting on each other on Twitter and decided, guess my holdout and my family issues are over. I'm going to sign with the Steelers. In fact, did not sign for 10 M's as he kept repeating on in the McAfee show. Signed for $20 million, which again, it's a reasonable number, I guess. Mike, how you doing? And are we shocked at all at the timing of this?
I mean, look, he clearly didn't want to go anywhere near the OTAs. And, I know people have talked about very shadowy, like there's some family stuff going on or whatever. I thought he didn't like his family. So I don't really know. I think it was just strictly, I don't want to be anywhere near OTAs. And I like to build the drama and say, like, I'm beholden to no one, attached to nothing. I'm free to do whatever I want. When the reality was, for the last 2 months, we all assumed that this was the place where he was going to land, and he does. And like, I don't know how much good football he has left in him. You obviously lived it for the last year. Let's see, 2 years ago was 3-4 plays in, whatever it was. But they needed it. You can't go into the year with Mason Rudolph and think you're going to continue your streak of being a winning team and maybe being a playoff team. Rodgers gives them, if they can extricate the best football out of him or something close to it, at his age now. Now I'm not talking about MVP type. Then they'll be right back into that 9-10 win mix and be a playoff team.
This is going to be Mike Tomlin's most challenging job. He's dealt with a lot of guys.
Yep.
Big Ben, obviously Le'Veon and Antonio Brown and a million guys. You could go, the list goes on. Joey Porter back in the day and all those guys. Rodgers is a special dude in like a lot of ways, and he's the most talented thrower of football I've ever seen, and the whole thing. And I'm not trying to make light of the fact that he is a Hall of Fame guy. And like we saw Brett Favre at the Jets, had like the injuries and stuff, and you saw flashes, and he went to Minnesota and he was awesome that first year. Yeah. And then he went back to being Brett Favre and threw the worst interception I've ever seen, and the rest is history. The point being, like, there's a chance he could potentially be successful here, and maybe they just by default win 9 or 10 games. That's kind of what Mike Tomlin teams do, and they'll get eliminated in the first round. That's also kind of what Aaron Rodgers teams have done for a long time now, is like pretty decent regular season. They get to the playoffs and fall on their face to a lesser opponent, where Rodgers doesn't really want to turn the football over as much, and it kind of gets a little bit more cautious. We saw that cautiousness last year a lot of doing my own offense, changing the plays. I'm very curious how him and Arthur Smith coincide. That Steelers offensive line is not very good. They don't have a lot of playmakers, in my opinion. I'm just very interested to see what, like, I know they're going to get Jonnu Smith, it looks like here, and obviously DK is a special receiver, but DK doesn't really play the type of game Rodgers plays at this point in his career. Rodgers just wouldn't throw the football downfield last year until the end of the year when he was healthy. So we'll see how that works. I guess my final thoughts will be the one, and I'll obviously touch on this more as we get later in the summer. I don't want to use an entire episode on Rodgers. I did a 45-minute where I popped blood vessels in my neck yelling about Rodgers on McAfee. The one thing I did want to bring up, which actually is a cool storyline, as all jokes aside, Rodgers gets the Jets and the entire NFC North this year. Pretty much every 3 weeks, he's playing a team that he's either arch rival or his former team. I know all eyes will be on Week 8 when he plays Green Bay. I actually think Week 1's more interesting, only because, like, back at the scene of the crime, it's a fresh wound where Green Bay was a rough exit, but like time's passed.
Yeah.
Week 1, the networks are probably kicking themselves now, right? They basically said they only put it on the 1:00 game because they weren't sure about Rodgers. I'm sure ESPN and NBC are like, God fucking damn it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, I'm intrigued by it. We obviously, Quinnen Williams in particular, like, disappointed that Aaron wasn't brought back, but I'm curious of how the entire room felt. And, we know Aaron Glenn, no allegiances there, and Aaron Glenn wants to get after the passer and be super aggressive. So, right away, it's a huge test. How's your leg? How's your body? Are you capable of doing this? Did you take good care of yourself? Have you been doing football things to keep your body in football shape the last 3-4 months when, again, whether he's family issues or, whatever the hell he was doing, um, you know, this is a different game. You guys lived it 2 years ago when he came in and immediately, strained the calf. And that was the precursor to popping the Achilles. Was he in great shape? I don't know, like kind of felt like not the best shape he could have been in. And that
Yeah.
sort of laid the foundation for what turned out to be a disastrous season. And quite frankly, a disappointing 2-year marriage.
Yeah. I will say that I'm very curious how that game's approached from both sides. The Jets are going to say absolutely nothing. Rogers is going to say a lot.
Aaron doesn't want him to say anything. Yeah.
Aaron wants them to say something, and I don't think they're going to give it to him. I can assure you this. I have no idea if the Jets are going to be good or not. I think none of us know. I think that's why they're a team that is frankly kind of interesting. I think similar to New England, where it's a lot of exciting things, but we've never seen it. And we've never seen. Mike's got a lot more pressure on him than he had in Tennessee. Aaron's got a lot of pressure on him in New York. Aaron Glenn is going to have those dudes dialed to like a 15. Like that first couple drives, I expect that stadium to be. I don't know how many the ratio of Jet Steelers fans and the whole thing. I will just tell you that place is going to be mobbed. I want to transition, Mike, to we'll have a lot more takeaways on all 32 of some of the OTA stuff. So shamelessly listen to both of us.
Cross promotion, yes.
Going into 2025, we're doing. Joe and Connor did a fun snake draft of drafting one season things, and me and Mike are going to do something. I'll drop on him of an all-time Patriots, all-time Jets, Bills, Dolphins. You can pick one season of every position. These guys, we're just going to do an all 22. Starters at each position. If we were building an all AFC East team going into 2025, there's obviously some obvious ones, and there's some other ones that are worth debating. Mike, interestingly enough, I'll just start before we get started here. There's quarterbacks, obviously, the easiest one to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot more defensive line, corner, linebacker. There's like a lot of really good players. And then it's like tackle and running back and receiver. It's like tight ends. Like I don't even know who I'm picking. Let's get it out of the way first. Josh Allen obviously is going to be a quarterback. I don't think I think some people would pick him literally if it was a full AFC or full NFL one. Mike, at running back, there's a lot of good backs in this division, but there's a lot of guys that you're left wanting more. I feel like I want a little more out of James Cook. I definitely want a little more out of Breece Hall, but at his peak, really good player. Both the Dolphins backs, like they're awesome when they're going, but they're very rarely ever going. New England, they might have two awesome backs, but last year Ramondre fumbled every snap. And again, I don't know as a rookie, like, are you going to come in and be a dominant player? We'll see. This is one of those positions, it's deep, but it's not like there's not a one guy that stands out above all else. Probably Cook, I guess, based off.
Yeah, I mean, I would take Cook based on last year, but obviously we're entering a different phase of James Cook. He wants $15 million a year. They're not close. He's staying away. Don't know whether he'll be there for mandatory minicamp or not. That's one of those things where you just wonder, like, is he going to be in the right frame of mind to be the same kind of player he was last year, where he was very important to them? Obviously, we talked on the All 32 about the job Joe Brady did and leaning into the run a little bit more, and Cook was a big part of that. I would assume they're going to take the same approach. It's just whether or not he's the back that he was last year, if his head is in the right space. But if it is, then I think that's sort of, I won't say it's easy because there are possibilities there. Trevion Henderson could emerge for the Patriots. Ramondre could go back to what he was a couple of years ago. Breece, same thing. But right now, today, I would take Cook.
Yeah, I think that's probably the realistic going into 2025. Again, he might be going into a contract year, right? Like so is Breece. I think both those guys will be more than revved up, ready to go. In terms of receiver, again, I'm not going to do the fullback thing. Like, it's just not worth our. We want to keep these, listenable, and we're not going to. If a fullback stands out, then we'll get to it. But receiver is interesting. I think there's really big names in this division. I don't think Diggs makes it because I don't know what he is.
Yep.
I think I would have a real strong conversation about him potentially making it. I almost want to leave Tyreek Hill off because he's so frustrating. Now he wants to fight Mike McDaniel. I mean, there's a lot there. I'm going to leave Jalen Waddle off. Dolphins fans won't be happy. He's probably 4. I just
Yeah,
Khalil
it's not like
Shakir does a
you're
better
not
job
saying
with
he's a
his.
crappy player. You're not comparing him to Kendrick Bourne here,
No,
or
just him and Khalil Shakir are play a similar role of more slot, a slot related role. Shakir's a better player right now, just based
Mhm.
off last year. I'd probably go Garrett, Tyreek, and Shakir. Is that kind of where you would land? I don't know if we're missing anybody else.
I don't think we are. I mean, obviously the Patriots are hopeful that one of the young players, particularly this year with Kyle Williams drafted in the third round, that he can become their full-time X or something close to it and give them that big play potential. But there's nobody other than Diggs on the Patriots roster that even has a real track record where you could put him in the conversation. Like we talked about last week, Diggs moving pretty well at OTAs. Like the idea of him being ready for week one is a little bit
Someone
more on
said
the
he's
table.
dealing on the field.
Yeah, it's a little bit more on the table, but coming off the ACL and generally, not being the same guy until at least a year from the injury. So you're talking late October, early November, is where he had the injury. But yeah, I think those would be the obvious names. I don't think we're missing anybody there. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that there's anybody that could emerge outside that group. And as you mentioned, having Waddle as the fourth guy, like that figures like it's weird. I think we've cast a good net there.
Yeah, I think the biggest question is who emerges as one out of like next year. I think obviously Tyreek's is a future Hall of Famer. Like he is one right now, but does Garrett or Waddle or Shakir, one of these guys, state the claim is like they're the best receiver in the division. I think Garrett probably is the best shot just based on volume and target share he's going to get, and that offense is going to have to run through him. Mike, tight end's weird. Like Kincaid should be the answer, but it's not quite as seamless as it should be based on where he's played. Like last year just was not. I don't know what was going on. I know there was some injury stuff. I think maybe confidence thing. I don't know what was going on there. Mason Taylor is not going to count right now. He's the guy who's never played an NFL snap.
Yep.
Hunter Henry is a guy who's at times very productive, but like I don't know if I would want to give him the best tight end in the division title. And then Jonnu Smith's probably getting traded. So
Right.
I don't. And then Dawson Knox is kind of Hunter Henry without scoring as many
Yeah,
touchdowns.
underutilized, I think.
Yeah. So where do we go at tight end? This is probably the hardest position I think on the entire.
So if Jonnu stays just based on production, I would say Jonnu. But it does appear that Jonnu's going to get moved. Those conversations restarted and whatnot. I didn't think I'd be saying this because I was a Kincaid guy, and I just remember leading into that draft, everybody saying he's the best pass catcher in the draft. That was wide receiver or tight end. People said he's the best pass catcher. His first year was pretty good. He thought it would take the next step. He was hurt a lot last year, played through it. Teammates raved about his toughness and whatnot, but he just didn't have the production. So I would say it's probably Hunter Henry, just because I feel like I know what I'm getting there. I'm going to get 50 to 60 catches and 600-ish yards. And I don't know. I just feel like he shows up. He plays every week. He's trustworthy. He's definitely May's favorite guy to this point in May's brief career. So I'd go there. But this is one of those positions that you said off the top where you're like, I don't necessarily love anybody. Like if I have Hunter Henry on my team, I'm pretty happy. But I'm not like, oh, we're building an offense around him, or oh, I'm going to feed him 100 targets. That's not who he is.
Yeah, like last year, 66 catches, 600 plus yards. It's hard to like really argue with him. Let's move on to the offensive line. Deion Dawkins, obviously, I think still for right now, although I think Olu Fashanu is going to be damn near the top of this list. I think Teron Armstead would have been my pick just because I know Teron is not the same durability that Deion has, but Teron's peak is just look at when the Dolphins played with him and without him. I just there's no more clear evidence of I think Connor Rogers pointed this out last week. He moved Vegas lines more than any player in the NFL that wasn't a quarterback last year. I mean, that's
crazy.
That's crazy as a left tackle who's not in their prime for that to happen. I guess Dawkins is the chalk pick there. Some form of AVT and Onwenu is probably who I would go interior wise. I'd argue Joe Tippmann's probably the center. You could probably argue elsewhere, but Tippmann showed a lot in year two. And then Morgan Moses on pedigree should be the pick, but I don't think he's the pick at this point. Spencer Brown is probably the best solidified in their prime 2025 tackle. And then again, can Membu be up there? He's a top 10 pick and he's 20 years old. Sure, but yet we don't know. So I'd probably go Dawkins, we'll move AVT for the sake of this game. Tippmann, Onwenu, and Spencer Brown. Miami, not shockingly, missing because that's a
Yes.
huge question with their team.
Yeah, they didn't do nearly enough in the offseason to sort of address it and fix it. So I don't know what the hell the plan is down there. I told you I do not feel good about what they've done here in the last 6 to 8 months, and the sideshow of Ramsey and the sideshow of Hill and just the whole thing. So I think they're in for some trouble this year. I can't quibble with anybody. It is pretty stark that at least Tippmann's on his way up at center, but like at guard, Onwenu, he deserved to get paid 2 years ago. He did. Going into the offseason, he was one of their best players. Their offensive line was in shambles. You knew you could play him. He was a damn good guard, and you knew you could move him over to tackle in a spot and do it that way. And then he got paid, and he had a really bad year last year. And he's shown up at the camp, and he's heavier than I think anyone would like him to be. So we'll see about if he gives you better performance than he did last year. But again, just based on what the overall group is here, I mean, I kind of like O'Cyrus Torrence from the Bills, but based on pedigree to this point, I'd probably say I'd lean in Onwenu, but that could easily change if Mike doesn't round himself into the proper shape by September.
There could be a problem. Yes. Defensively, this defense, I think, if you exclude safeties, which we're going to move around a little bit, I would the front seven of this defense, I would argue, is just as good as any defense, the front seven in the league, and especially at corner as well. Like, I don't know if there's a better dude. We'll get to Sauce and Christian Gonzalez, but like, dude,
it's a good.
If you want to play press man, good luck against that. Good luck against this unit. Defensive line wise, I think Milton Williams and Quinnen are probably the two picks. Christian Wilkins obviously out of the division. I don't know what Christian Barmore is yet. I think Ed Oliver's too inconsistent for me to be on there. Quinnen's been a first-team All-Pro. Milton Williams got $27 million a year. So
he better be in the conversation for that kind of money.
That might turn ugly quickly. Is there anybody else that I'm missing on the interior there? I think those two guys, defensive line-wise, I want to make sure I shout out Oliver, but those are Jordan Phillips. It's like,
I mean, like solid players, but definitely not the top of the heap. Barmore's an interesting one to me because then we've talked about this for months and months and months. The blood clot thing. This is not like a coming back from a knee injury or a wrist injury or whatever. This is something that happened last summer, recurred when he came back. He has said he's not worried about him coming back again. As we talked about on the All 32 pod, I would have loved, and I did ask, but he just didn't give an answer. I would love to know why he's so confident. Did doctors figure out something and now it's good? But he does, at least in the OTAs, he's leaner. He looks really quick. And if you get the Barmore of 2 years ago, then we have a real conversation about, Quinnen, I think, is still the guy, but you have a conversation there about Milton versus Barmore. But I don't think we missed any. Zach Sealer's a nice player in Miami, but he would be in this group. He would be the rotational piece. He would not be one of the starters.
Yeah, I think that group's pretty damn good. Edge-wise is interesting. I think it's probably Rousseau and one of the Jets' edge guys. Jalen Phillips is another one similar to Barmore. Like Jalen Phillips would be on here. He would be probably the first pick of all these edgers when he's healthy. It's back-to-back years of, again, I don't know what he's going to be. And he's a guy who struggled with injury throughout his career. It's honestly a really big shame because I felt like he was finally getting to the player we all want to see. Outside of that, the New England guys, it's like Keon White's got a shot potentially. Harold Landry 4 years ago, maybe. It's probably Jermaine or Will McDonald. I would lean Will McDonald going into 25 because, again, similar to Phillips and Barmore and these guys, Jermaine's coming off an Achilles. Will McDonald's a double-digit sack guy with no help last year, and he just put on 20 pounds of muscle. So I'd probably go Will, Rousseau, Quinnen. We'll get to Quincy in a minute, and Milton Williams. Any argument there? I think that's probably the four.
No, I would say the one thing for me, and you mentioned Keon White, is now if he does have a healthy Barmore and he does have a productive Milton Williams, who is continuing to ascend from what he was in Philadelphia, he was the only guy that people had to really worry about last year on the defensive line. So, after a great start, first 3-4 weeks where he was just a demon, he was in the backfield a lot, and you start thinking oh, he's putting up like Pro Bowl type numbers. He went relatively quiet. I would imagine that if those two guys on the interior in particular are as good as we think they can be, then he's going to see a lot of singles. And if he doesn't eat that up, then okay, then this is what he is as a player. I think there's another level for him to take, so he could get into that conversation. But, based on year in, year out production, I mean, I think we've always felt like we wanted a little bit more from Rousseau, but he's a good player. And I think Will McDonald, was sort of, I don't want to say a revelation, but that was a really nice year. And I like that he's come back a little bit heavier. And if he still has that spin move in his bag, okay, I'm good with that over Jermaine. And I'm a Jermaine guy, but to your point, like, it's just hard. You're coming off the Achilles. Like, we got to go see you do it and see you be the explosive player you were before I can say definitively, oh yeah, now put him back in the conversation.
Linebacker is interesting because there's a lot of really good players. There's a lot of former All-Pros coming off down years or injuries. There's a lot of guys that potentially could be on here. There's a good shot Terrell Bernard should be on here and Jamie and Sherwood should be on here. They're both guys that are ascending players that both just got paid in the last 12 months. Bernard's case, I feel like he's always hurt, similar to Milano, and who we'll get to in a second. And Sherwood's played 15 games as a starter in his career and was really good. 16 was really good last year, but I don't think he was great. I think he was just a good player. They're betting on getting better. This one feels fairly simple based on pedigree and what we're projecting. Quincy, to me, is a top pick. He's a guy who was an All-Pro 12 months ago. He had the back stuff last year. I think there was just a mess of it. The organization was a mess, as we've covered a million times.
Yes.
But I think Quincy is the most talented player. Milano, we're going to put Milano here. Me and Mike are both doing it purely out of not being rage bait. I just don't know what Milano is anymore because when he's been healthy, and he's really healthy, he's awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't.
He's one of the top defensive players in the league when he's healthy.
Just I don't know if he's healthy or he's ever going to be healthy again. It kind of feels like a guy who his body just took too much of a beating, and now it's just it's the tricep, it's a pec, it's this. And then Robert Spillane's one that I don't know if people would have expected us to put on here, but he's a really good player. And he's probably a higher floor than what Sherwood and Bernard are right now. And I guess going into that year, he should be a pretty big upgrade for them over Tavai, who obviously pulled the calf. But any arguments over those three? I think that's probably the three we'd pick.
No, and that I like Jamie a lot. The Patriots did too. The Patriots were heavily interested in him. He was sort of their first choice at that position. They pivot to Spillane when Jamie decides to stay with the Jets. I've just been impressed by watching Sherwood in the OTAs. I mean, Spillane in the OTAs. And I would say that the thing that you see it on tape, his testing wasn't awesome. He wasn't this, he's really fast. Like, you see it on tape, and then to see it in person, and it's a stark change from what the Patriots have done. They've had the bigger linebackers. Tavai's actually slimmed down this year to sort of try to find a roster spot, but they moved on from Juwan Bentley, who's a bigger thumper, 250-ish guy, to this 225-ish, maybe a little lighter than that. I don't know, but you can see the speed, and it's it's a little different from what we're used to seeing here in New England, but he's just been a really good football player. And I think that they're clearly paying him to be that for another couple more years. And I think it's certainly set up to be that way for him, especially with the big guys in front of him. Yeah,
it's a good group. Corner, I referenced it before. We can just kind of go the full defensive backfield here. I don't think this is as difficult outside of one of the safety spots, which I genuinely still have no idea what I'm picking as my second safety. I'm going to put Teron Johnson at safety as one of the safeties, and I'm going to go Sauce, Gonzalez, and Carter as the three corners. I think all three of those guys will be Pro Bowlers, and I think Gonzalez and Sauce will be all pros in 2025, so it's kind of hard for me to not put those guys. Johnson and Carter are probably, and Kenny Moore, the three best slot corners in the league. And I'd rather just put both of them in there because the safeties, frankly, are the worst position outside of tight end in this division, and it's not particularly close. Andre Cisco had a down year last year. It's hard to put him in there. Taylor Rapp's fine. Mike, what are we doing at the second safety spot? Because,
by the way, Christian Benford, who just got paid by the Bills, would have a great argument to be in the conversation at corner, but not over either of the outside guys that you're choosing in Sauce and Gonzo. That's just facts of the matter, 2-time All-Pro, second-team All-Pro last year. Maybe Benford gets to that level. We'll see. So Javon Holland would have been, but now he's obviously with the Giants. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, you might call me, me being a homer, but like, I'm going to say Jabril Peppers because, the off-field stuff is, the whole thing in the court case, that's all gone. They've talked a lot here about playing violently. Jabril does that. He has been sort of one of the leaders, clearly, of the defensive group thus far in the OTA period. And he was really good 2 years ago. So I'm just kind of basing this on what I saw 2 years ago, knowing how Mike likes to utilize his safeties in that defense. I feel like he's got a bounce back year ahead of him. Kyle Duggar, they paid a ton of money 2 years ago, played hurt much of last year. He's still recovering. We haven't seen him do anything. He's been off to the side and been on the lower field as he recovers from ankle surgery. So he's another one where I never really truly loved him as a player. I always thought he was a solid player, but nothing great. I know some people are kind of hoping that he can get back to that level, but I could see more of Peppers being in the Kevin Byard sort of player for the Patriots, maybe not as productive as Byard was with the ball. Then I could see Duggar. So I'm going to say Peppers because I look at what Miami's got again. Don't quite understand why. I think you're kind of getting a feel for how we feel about the teams in the division by how many guys from Miami that are not making this list or even getting mentioned. So yeah, to me, that's probably where I go. I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. Like you said, this was one of the, if not the toughest position to pick because it wasn't unlike the cornerback where you're like, oh, you can make an argument for this guy. No, this one, you can't make an argument. It's like, who's the best of bad group?
Yeah, I would say we're going to do specialist. We're not going to do specialist. I actually have no interest in doing it. And it's no offense that there isn't like in my opinion, a particular person in this division that needs to be shout out because they're so good at their job. We'll see. I think this is one of those post the year you have a good feeling. I think if the Jets or Patriots want to be up there with Buffalo or Miami for that matter, you better hope your kicker or punter on here because otherwise that means one of your phases is bad and you guys and neither team is good enough right now to compete with either the Bills without.
Yeah, Will, just think about the Patriots, for instance. Jets have got turnover there. Bills have a new punter. Miami has a new punter as well.
Miami
right? And then the Patriots drafted a long snapper, cut their Joe Cardona, drafted a long snapper, and drafted a kicker. So, I don't know. We've seen guys get drafted before, especially a kicker, and be like, well, what did you do that for? Patriots have done it twice in the last 5 years, and this is the third time now they've drafted a kicker. The two previous guys, one's not even in the league. It's like it's not a guarantee. That position is no guarantee.
Yeah, it's oh boy, just you open up Twitter and it is just man.
Oh, the Aaron Rodgers stuff.
Trump versus Rodgers is just a disaster. Mike, obviously appreciate you hopping on. We're gonna be hopping on all 32. I'll be back Saturday. We'll talk some more OTAs as the Jets get into minicamp. Aaron Rodgers against the Jets, week 1, officially happening.
Let's go.
And popcorn is already ready. I'm already. I might go for a run after this. I'm juiced up to boo the shit out of that dude for 3 straight hours. I don't care if it's unbiased or biased, whatever. I'm
that's fine.
Doing it. Appreciate it for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon.